Trick or treat. Ever wonder how this whole Halloween thing got started? Why do we dress up, knock on strangers' doors, carve creepy faces into pumpkins, and binge on candy without a second thought? It feels like Halloween has always been around, right? But believe it or not, it's been through a wild, winding journey across centuries and cultures to become the spooky, or not so spooky, celebration we know today. Somewhere along the way, ancient rituals, ghost stories, and quirky traditions all got tangled up and turned into a night where we can flirt with fear, have fun with the weird, and maybe even connect with something a little deeper. Curious how it all began? Well, let's just say the story of Halloween is as strange and unexpected as the tricks waiting around every dark corner. The origins of Halloween are firmly tied to Samhain, an old Celtic festival that dates back to about 2,500 years ago. Samhain was all about transition, specifically the shift from the light, warm months into the cold, dark half of the year. Imagine being a farmer thousands of years ago, wrapping up your harvest while knowing you were heading into the harsh, unforgiving winter. That looming darkness didn't just bring colder weather. The Celts believed it also brought something far scarier: spirits, ghosts, and supernatural beings crossing over into the land of the living. For the Celts, time wasn't just a straight line, it came in cycles. And Samhain marked the most important cycle of them all: the death of one year and the birth of another. The idea was that at this in-between point, the barriers between worlds grew thin. Friendly spirits, lost loved ones, and malevolent beings could roam freely for one single night. It was basically the original spooky season. But instead of candy and costumes, people lit huge bonfires to ward off evil spirits. The fires were also believed to cleanse the community, both physically and spiritually, before everyone hunkered down for winter. The costumes from this time weren't playful at all. People disguised themselves as animals, demons, or spirits, hoping to trick the otherworldly creatures into leaving them alone. It was as if to tell the spirits that you were one of them, and that there was nothing to see here. In essence, the Celts weren't just celebrating a holiday, they were navigating survival through both the natural and supernatural threats that came with the winter months. Another interesting element of Samhain is how offerings of food and drink were left outside to appease wandering spirits. These weren't treats for the living. They were meant to keep spirits happy and, most importantly, out of the house. This practice eventually evolved into customs like leaving out milk and cookies for Santa, which in hindsight feels like a much friendlier version of appeasing spirits. Finally, let's talk about how Samhain's view of death differed from modern perspectives. Death wasn't something to fear in the same way we think of it today. The Celts believed the dead weren't gone forever, but could visit during Samhain. It was a natural part of the cycle, just like winter. But while some spirits were welcome, others, those nasty, mischievous ones, needed to be kept at bay. Samhain wasn't just a spooky night for fun. It was life and death, survival and tradition all wrapped into one festival. And even as the centuries rolled by, that core feeling, this mix of fear, awe, and celebration, has stayed remarkably intact. As time went on, the Romans swept through Celtic lands, and with them came new traditions, new gods, and eventually, Christianity. Now, the thing about early Christianity is that it didn't just bulldoze over pagan customs, it was much sneakier than that. The church learned that it was easier to absorb and rebrand existing festivals rather than ban them outright. Samhain was one of those festivals that got a bit of a makeover. Around the 8th century, Pope Gregory III declared November 1st to be All Saints' Day, also known as All Hallows' Day, a day to honor saints and martyrs. But here's where things get interesting. The Celts already had their spooky night on October 31st, so the church kept it but gave it a new name: All Hallows' Eve. This was a strategic move. Instead of fighting against deeply rooted customs, the church just made it holy. Clever, right? Now, this wasn't just about spirits anymore, it was about souls, especially those stuck in purgatory, that gray area between heaven and hell. People believed that the prayers of the living could help these trapped souls reach heaven. And just like that, What was once a night of appeasing wandering spirits became a time to focus on praying for the dead. But even though the meaning shifted, the fear of the unknown remained, and with it, the need to ward off evil spirits. People still dressed up, still lit fires, and still believed that strange things happened on this night. One of the traditions that evolved during this period was souling. Groups of poor people, especially children, would go door to door asking for soul cakes, small round buns flavored with spices and marked with a cross. In exchange, they would offer prayers for the family's deceased loved ones. It was a win-win. The living got a snack, the dead got some prayers, and the whole neighborhood participated in this ritual of connection. Sound familiar? This custom is one of the many roots of modern trick-or-treating. The Catholic idea of ghosts also added a new layer to the way people viewed Halloween. No longer just mischievous spirits from another world, ghosts were now thought to be souls in limbo, trapped between heaven and hell, seeking resolution. People began to tell stories about wandering spirits, lost souls, and ghostly apparitions, all of which gave Halloween that eerie, haunted vibe that still lingers today. The mixing of pagan and Christian customs didn't stop with Halloween. It set a precedent. So many holidays, from Christmas to Easter, carry traces of earlier traditions within them. But Halloween is special because it never quite shook its spooky roots. Even as it was folded into the Christian calendar, the night retained a certain edge, a sense that the boundary between worlds was thinner than usual. By the time Halloween reached the medieval period, it had become a mashup of Samhain, All Hallows' Eve, and folk superstitions. But things were about to change again, big time, when these customs made their way across the Atlantic and beyond. When Halloween customs reached new lands, they didn't spread in a straight line. Instead, these traditions blended, evolved, and took on new forms depending on where they landed. At its heart, Halloween has always been about death, spirits, and transformation, but the way people express those ideas varies wildly depending on the culture. So let's take a look at some of the most interesting ways that different societies honor the dead and face their fears. In Mexico, for example, you've got Dia de los Muertos, or Day of the Dead. It's celebrated on November 1st and 2nd, but it feels entirely different from Halloween in the US. Instead of focusing on fear or trying to ward off spirits, Dia de los Muertos embraces death as part of life. Families create altars or ofrendas, filled with offerings, food, photos, sugar skulls, and bright marigolds, to welcome the spirits of deceased loved ones. It's a joyful, colorful celebration, filled with music, parades, and parties. The focus here isn't on scaring anyone off, it's on remembering and reconnecting with those who've passed on. It's Halloween's cousin in spirit, but it reflects a completely different attitude toward death, one that's celebratory rather than spooky. Then there's Japan's Obon Festival, a summer event dedicated to honoring the spirits of ancestors. Unlike Mexico, this festival does not have its origins from the Europeans. Rather, its roots stem from the Ghost Festival, from China. During this festival, lanterns are lit to guide the spirits back to the world of the living, and people gather to perform traditional dances known as Bon Odori. Much like Samhain or Dia de los Muertos, it's about bridging the gap between the worlds of the living and the dead, though it's less about fear and more about respect and tradition. The Ghost Festival in China, as we just mentioned, is held during the 7th lunar month. It's a time when the gates of the underworld are believed to open and ghosts roam the earth. People burn paper money and offer food to appease wandering spirits, ensuring they won't bring misfortune. It's one of the more eerie celebrations on this list. Spirits that aren't properly honored can cause chaos, which gives the whole festival an underlying sense of unease. Meanwhile, Ireland and Scotland, where many Halloween customs originated, still maintain some of the oldest practices. In rural areas, people light bonfires on Halloween night, carry lanterns made from turnips, and tell ghost stories. Some communities even practice divination games, trying to predict the future by peeling apples or pouring molten lead into water. It's old school spooky, the kind of Halloween that makes you feel like you're connected to something ancient. But the version of Halloween we're most familiar with today, the candy, the costumes, the haunted houses, was largely shaped in North America, thanks to waves of Irish and Scottish immigrants in the 19th century. At first, the holiday was a small community event, focused on things like telling ghost stories and playing pranks. Trick-or-treating wasn't even part of the deal yet. Kids would celebrate by pulling stunts like tipping over outhouses or soaping windows. By the early 1900s, Halloween was still mostly about parlor games, storytelling, and local pranks. The pranks in particular became a bit of a problem. Kids, and let's be honest, some mischievous adults, would soap up windows, let animals loose, and even dismantle wagons just for the fun of it. Towns tried to rein in the mischief by encouraging door-to-door visits, costume parties, and more organized activities. That shift, away from pranks and toward celebration, was the first big step in Halloween's transformation. By the 1920s and 30s, Halloween started to become a community event. Parades, neighborhood parties, and small festivals became the norm. It was a way to make the holiday less chaotic and more family-friendly. Then came trick-or-treating, the game changer. Kids going door to door asking for sweets wasn't entirely new, but it didn't become widespread until the post-World War II era. With sugar rations lifted and candy companies eager to boost sales, trick-or-treating exploded in popularity. The focus shifted from mischief to harmless fun, and Halloween began its journey toward becoming a holiday for kids and adults with a sweet tooth. Costumes also evolved during this period. Early Halloween costumes were homemade, simple ghost sheets, witches' hats, or whatever old clothes could pass as spooky. By the 1950s, companies started mass-producing costumes, often based on popular characters from comics and TV shows. Suddenly, Halloween wasn't just about scaring people. It was also about being whoever you wanted to be for a night. Kids could transform into their favorite heroes or monsters, and the costumes became as much a part of the fun as the candy. Jack-o'-lanterns, which started with carved turnips in Ireland, became full-blown pumpkin art projects in America. Pumpkins were cheap, plentiful, and much easier to carve than turnips, so they quickly became the go-to decoration. Towns and neighborhoods held pumpkin carving contests, and the tradition grew into the elaborate art form we know today. Everything from simple grinning faces to full recreations of famous characters. The rise of haunted houses was another milestone in Halloween's transformation. The first haunted attractions were small, community-run affairs, but by the 1970s, they had become big business. Theme parks like Disneyland got in on the action with their Halloween-themed events, and eventually, professional haunted houses started popping up all over the place, offering people a chance to pay for the thrill of being scared out of their minds. The horror genre, of course, played a huge role in cementing Halloween's identity as a night of thrills and chills. In 1978, John Carpenter's Halloween hit theaters, introducing the world to Michael Myers, the masked killer who became a symbol of the holiday. The slasher genre exploded after that, with movies like Friday the 13th and A Nightmare on Elm Street adding their own iconic villains to the Halloween roster. Watching scary movies became a Halloween tradition of its own, and it's one that still holds strong today. In the 80s and 90s, Halloween began expanding beyond just kids. Adults started getting in on the fun, with costume parties becoming a major part of the season. Cities like New York and Los Angeles began holding massive Halloween parades, where costumes were wild, elaborate, and anything but kid-friendly. Hey everyone, just a quick intermission here. I wanted to say thank you for watching this video. It really means a lot to me. Did you know that over 80% of you who are watching right now aren't subscribed to the channel? If you've enjoyed this content so far, it would be incredible if you could hit that subscribe button. It's a small gesture, but it really helps the channel grow and ensures that you won't miss any more of our fascinating stories we explore together. Also, if you're feeling generous, please give this video a thumbs up, leave a comment, and share with anyone else who may enjoy it. Your support really does make a difference and keeps the content coming. Thanks again, and let's get back to the story. Today, Halloween has exploded beyond its roots, evolving into a cultural juggernaut that's not only celebrated in the US and Canada, but embraced by countries all over the world. Each place puts its own twist on the holiday, but no matter where you are, October 31st brings a unique blend of creativity, fear, and fun. What started as a modest Celtic festival has grown into one of the most widely recognized holidays, driven largely by modern pop culture, social media, and globalization. In the US and Canada, Halloween is practically synonymous with trick-or-treating, costumes, horror movies, and haunted attractions. In recent years, the rise of social media has taken Halloween to another level. Platforms like Instagram and TikTok are flooded with costume inspiration, haunted house tours, and DIY decoration ideas. Halloween-themed challenges, like hashtag 31 Days of Halloween or costume contests, make it easy for people to participate from anywhere in the world. It's no longer just about going door to door for candy. Halloween has become a month-long celebration, with activities stretching throughout October. Although Halloween as we know it is heavily Americanized, other countries have embraced it in unique ways. In the UK, Halloween was once overshadowed by Guy Fawkes Night on November 5th, but in recent years it has gained popularity. Australia and New Zealand were a little slower to warm up to Halloween, but as American movies and TV shows spread the idea, trick-or-treating has become more common, especially in urban areas. Japan, with its love of costumes and festivals, has taken Halloween and made it its own spectacle. While trick-or-treating isn't as widespread, costume parades and massive street parties are all the rage. In places like Shibuya, Tokyo, thousands of people flood the streets in elaborate costumes, celebrating Halloween with a level of enthusiasm that rivals American festivities. In Mexico, the influence of Dia de los Muertos is still far stronger than Halloween itself, but even there, you'll see Halloween decorations and parties popping up. It's not uncommon for people to combine the two holidays, moving seamlessly between Halloween costumes on October 31st and traditional altars and offerings for loved ones on November 1st and 2nd. Even in South Korea and Hong Kong, where Halloween has no historical roots, it has become an excuse to dress up and party. Clubs, bars, and amusement parks go all out with Halloween themes, drawing crowds eager to experience a night of costumes and spooky fun. In Europe, particularly in countries like Germany and France, Halloween is growing in popularity, especially among younger generations who enjoy the chance to dress up and throw themed parties. This eventually led to the commercialization of Halloween. One of the reasons Halloween has spread so easily is its versatility and marketability. Candy companies, costume makers, and retailers have all played a huge role in shaping the holiday into the consumer-driven event it is today. In the US alone, Halloween spending tops billions of dollars every year. From costumes and candy to decorations and party supplies, Halloween has become big business. Once Halloween's popularity skyrocketed, candy manufacturers went all in. They didn't just sell candy, they sold the idea of Halloween itself. Mini candy bars, candy corn, and bags of mixed treats became staples. The fun-size candy bar was invented purely to make Halloween more marketable. By the time the early 2000s rolled around, Halloween had become one of the most profitable holidays for retailers, right behind Christmas. But it wasn't just about candy anymore, decorations exploded too. Plastic skeletons, inflatable ghosts, spider webs, and animatronic zombies became must-have items for front lawns. Halloween decorations went from being cute and kitschy to full-blown yard haunting competitions, with some people going so over the top that their homes looked like film sets from horror movies. Stores start stocking Halloween items as early as September, and many people spend weeks or even months planning their costumes and parties. Haunted attractions have also grown more elaborate, with some becoming full-on theme parks dedicated to scaring visitors out of their wits. Theme parks like Universal Studios host Halloween Horror Nights, transforming the entire park into a giant haunted house, with actors dressed as movie monsters, clowns, and zombies lurking around every corner. Horror movies, TV specials, and themed content keep the spirit of Halloween alive throughout the month of October. Streaming services like Netflix and Hulu capitalize on the season by releasing Halloween-themed shows and movies, encouraging people to binge horror content all month long. Today, Halloween sits at the intersection of cultures. People use it as a way to escape reality, indulge in candy and costumes, and experience a bit of harmless fear, whether that's in a haunted house, a horror movie marathon, or just the thrill of walking through a dark neighborhood at night. It's clear that the fascination with death and the supernatural is something we all share. And while the costumes and customs may look different around the world, at its core, Halloween and all its cousins remains a way to confront the mysteries we don't fully understand. Halloween has always thrived on stories, the kind that make your skin crawl or keep you awake at night, staring at the ceiling. Some of these tales are ancient, passed down for centuries, while others are more modern, rooted in urban legends or horror literature. Regardless of where they come from, these stories have shaped how we celebrate Halloween today, adding to the holiday's eerie and thrilling atmosphere. One of the earliest and most famous ghost stories connected to Halloween is The Legend of Sleepy Hollow by Washington Irving, published in 1820. It's about the Headless Horseman, but I want to save that for another video, so I'm only giving it a quick mention here. The roots of horror storytelling, and by extension Halloween traditions, owe a lot to Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, 1818. Though it's technically science fiction, Frankenstein's themes of unnatural creation and fear of the unknown have inspired Halloween costumes and decorations for generations. The image of the mad scientist and his monstrous creation perfectly fits the Halloween vibe, an exploration of what happens when humans tamper with forces they can't control. Frankenstein's monster isn't just a creature, he's also a symbol of isolation and fear, which makes him perfect for Halloween. As people don masks and costumes, the idea of transforming into something else, whether monstrous or magical, goes right back to Shelley's influence. And in the spirit of transformation, Frankenstein's monster has taken on many forms in pop culture, from classic horror films to goofy cartoon versions for kids. Of course, there are stories about vampires and werewolves, but we've already covered those in previous videos. Instead, as Halloween evolved into a night of scares and thrills, urban legends started to play a big role in shaping its narrative. Stories like The Hook Man, where a couple hears news of an escaped killer while parked on a dark road, or Bloody Mary, a spirit who appears if you say her name in the mirror, tap into modern fears while keeping that supernatural edge. These legends spread like wildfire, especially among kids and teenagers, creating a sense that something bad could happen at any moment on Halloween night. The rise of the slasher genre in the late 20th century took these fears to a whole new level. When John Carpenter's Halloween 1978 hit theaters, it introduced Michael Myers, a masked killer who stalks babysitters on Halloween night. The film was a massive hit, and it reshaped Halloween forever. Suddenly, October 31st wasn't just about ghosts and goblins. It was about the very real threat of the unknown hiding behind a mask. Slasher films like Friday the 13th and A Nightmare on Elm Street followed in Halloween's footsteps, turning fear into entertainment. The mask became an important symbol, something ordinary that could hide something terrifying. And from there, the concept of Halloween masks and costumes became as much about hiding as they were about pretending. In recent years, TV shows, movies, and video games have kept Halloween storytelling traditions alive and well. Think of The Simpsons and their Treehouse of Horror episodes, which have become a Halloween tradition in their own right. These mini-episodes offer a perfect blend of humor and horror, poking fun at classic scary stories while still embracing the spooky spirit. Meanwhile, horror films have continued to evolve. Modern classics like The Conjuring, Get Out, and Hereditary tap into psychological fears and social anxieties, proving that the art of storytelling around fear is still very much alive. Even in video games like Resident Evil or Phasmophobia, players get to experience the thrill of being hunted by monsters or spirits firsthand. Halloween allows us to safely explore the things that scare us, whether it's a headless horseman, a masked killer, or the idea that something just might be lurking in the shadows. At its core, Halloween is still about embracing the unknown. Whether you're creeping through a haunted house, watching horror movies, or handing out candy, the night taps into the same blend of fear, excitement, and play, that has existed since the time of Samhain. While bonfires have given way to string lights and costumes have become more playful than frightening, the essence of Halloween remains, a chance to indulge in mischief, confront anxieties, and find comfort in the thrill, all within the safety of celebration. Fear in the right setting becomes fun, a rush of adrenaline that reminds us we're alive and safe. That's the magic of Halloween. It lets us explore our fears, whether through ghost stories, haunted attractions, or slasher films, while keeping them manageable. Costumes offer more than just a way to look cool. They allow us to explore new sides of ourselves, whether becoming a hero, a villain, or something we wouldn't usually express. There are no rules, just imagination and freedom to play. Entire communities light up with decorations and celebrations, creating connections among neighbors and strangers alike. Ultimately, Halloween is more than a holiday. It's a state of mind. It's the one night of the year when the world feels a little different, a little darker, a little wilder, a little more magical. It invites us to step out of our routines and embrace the unknown, finding joy in fear and mischief. Whether you're dressing up, sharing ghost stories, or wandering under flickering jack-o'-lanterns, you're part of something timeless, reminding us that even in the darkness, there's always a bit of magic to be found.